What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatuito Boxing Show. And what a jam-packed weekend it was for the sport of boxing. Three major cards that took place on, or at least two major boxing cards that took place on Saturday. And then a big exhibition that was taking place out in LA, headlined by former UFC stars, former MMA greats, Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz. A card which had boxers throughout the entire card, whether they were top contenders or blue chip prospects, such like Kermel Moton, who was on that card. Shane Mosley Jr. and Danny Jacobs were the co-main event. And so there was boxers and former MMA stars. I think some bare knuckle fighters that formed up or rounded up the rest of the card. But the main two cards were the William Cepeda Giovanni Cabrera fight that was taking place about 40 minutes outside of LA, out in Ontario, California. And then out in Jersey, the Shakur Stevenson fight. There's a lot to take away from the Shakur Stevenson Haritunian card. And that's the one that we're going to talk about here today. Let's talk about everything that was going into this fight. Shakur Stevenson, coming off of that last performance against Edwin De Los Santos during NASCAR opening week out in Vegas last, October. So he had not been active since. Remember that he said he was going to retire. He's the WBC champ at 135. He said he was going to retire. Then he came back. Then the fight was announced and the fight got delayed. And then it got finally announced again. I think it was announced originally for like April or something like that. It got delayed, and then it ended up coming to fruition, and they ended up adding former Frank Martin foe, Artem Haritunian. Now, Haritunian, a very solid fighter, a fighter that reminds me a lot of Vanis Medarosian, a come-forward fighter that likes to lunge forward, decent power behind his punches, but overall finds himself off balance more often than not. He is a high-volume puncher, and likes to make things interesting. He complicates fights, and he did that against Frank Martin, a fight that was getting out of reach of Frank Martin until the last round, where he ends up taking a knee due to accumulation of damage that he sustained to the body, and that ended up edging out Frank Martin on the scorecards and got him the victory, which in turn ended up getting him into the big showdown with Tank. And in which he got stopped. Frank Martin ends up getting knocked out, which was, mid-June or so. So that leads us to Haritunian, a former Frank Martin foe, into this fight with Shakur Stevenson, where Shakur was defending his title. This was the final fight, the final fight for Shakur Stevenson with his top rank contract. They offered him a 5-fight, $15 million contract. He did not accept. He proceeded with the weekend, and he was being very loud about Top Rank protecting Lomachenko, people not wanting to fight him. He made a big deal about this being his coming out party. Told Haritunian he was going to knock him out, to watch out for the body. He was going to knock him out with a body shot. He had an off night against Edwin De Los Santos, like any boxer does. He was going to perform on this one. Remember, we have previous fights of Shakur Stevenson where people have booed him during the fight, have booed him after the fight. People that ask for more of Shakur Stevenson. He is your old school, sweet science type boxer, and you can't knock him for that. He has a top-notch skill level, and what we witnessed on Saturday was not the Edwin De Los Santos performance. This was a really solid performance by Shakur Stevenson. Really flawless performance at that by Shakur Stevenson. If we were to look at it from boxistically speaking, I guess I should say, picking my words properly. Sweet science at his best. Hit and don't get hit. Haritunian, just like we said, took the fight to Shakur, and it's almost like Shakur seeing something else going on there. There's a lot to take away from this, right? Because this is the final fight of his contract. If they made an offer of 5 fights, $15 million, with a solid performance, getting the crowd on their feet, this was his home crowd out in Newark, New Jersey. If he would have put on a show-stopping performance, you bet that the leverage would be on his side and he would be able to negotiate a better deal for himself with Top Rank. He's one of Top Rank's top stars. And what we witnessed instead was a Haritunian that was coming forward, trying to take the fight to Shakur Stevenson, and Shakur Stevenson picked them apart, counterpunched them perfectly, hit and don't get hit, and that's exactly what he did. The issue is that Shakur Stevenson, as flawless as he fought, as perfect of a performance as he put, there is a flaw to Shakur Stevenson's perfection. And that is the fact that although I don't believe that he lacks the killer instinct, he doesn't want to engage. And it's very evident by what we saw. This is not a critique of his style. It is an acknowledgement as to what's missing and why people are checking out of Shakur Stevenson's style. Why the promoters are not standing behind him or clamoring to sign him, because he can't sell pay-per-views, and the promoters are in it to make money. The promoters want the Tank Davises. This is not a knockout game. But when fighters are willing to engage and willing to take a chance, and the chance pays off, more often than not, they end up becoming household names and superstars. They put asses in seats. They sell tickets. They make revenue, or they generate revenue. Shakur Stevenson consistently, the times that he's been out in Jersey at his hometown, he draws his home crowd. Now, if you look at the memes and the trolls that Shakur Stevenson suffers from, is people saying that they fall asleep during his fights. And people were at it again. A lot of funny stuff, a lot of funny posts that come about. Even one where they might have caught Terrence Crawford blinking, but it definitely looks like he's sleeping with Andre Ward in the background, nodding off, and the rest of the crew just hurting to stay awake. Many posts out there of fans that were just racked out, just snoring during that fight. And the issue is that Shakur Stevenson, as dominant as he was, he had several opportunities in the 4th round. He had an opportunity in the 6th round. He had an opportunity in the 8th round to take Haritunian out. He had him hurt. I don't believe for a second that he lacks the killer instinct, because he's that precise and that accurate with his punching. He just doesn't want to take the chance in case he gets caught. And that's what it takes to take a chance. You take a gambit, which will potentially momentarily leave you exposed, and you take that risk in order to land your knockout or your home run punch. Tank does it. He gets hit, but he continues to inch forward until he takes his opposition out. He smothers him. He just did it to Frank Martin. Ryan Garcia, I know, he's a hot topic right now, or a sour topic. But he just goes in for the kill, and if he gets caught, he gets caught, and he's been caught. And that's what people allude to, the Mexican style and so forth. Shakur could have closed the show and could have very well, very easily negotiated himself a better deal with Top Rank without having the need to go shop around, and let alone the fact that Top Rank has 3 of the 4 lightweight champions under their banner, with Denis Berinchyk, Vasily Lomachenko, and Shakur Stevenson. Now Shakur's gone. Reports are, as of this recording, that he's going to be considering either Eddie Hearn with Matchroom, where he could potentially move up to 140, maybe seek a fight with Liam Perro there, maybe seek a fight again with Devin Haney, one that was passed up before, or he'll look for the services of Floyd Mayweather to where they could potentially start a campaign, since Mayweather and Tank are not in very good terms. Leonard Ellerby has since been fired. So they could definitely start a campaign in getting that ticket, that big ticket fight against Tank Davis. But he had it in his hands. If he would have put a knockout performance with the crowd on their feet, this was not a dead crowd. This is a crowd that was electric all night. And I'll prove it to you. If you didn't watch the card, Abdullah Mason had people standing and applauding him with his performance. He continues to perform. He continues to show out. And he continues to improve. He's developing well and they're matching him well. Keyshawn Davis and the Miguel Madueño fight had people on their feet, people at the edge of their seat, people cheering, people screaming, because Keyshawn Davis tried to knock out Miguel Madueño the entire time. Hit him with some really good shots, some really great combinations. A fight that got so testy at one point that at the end of one of the rounds, I think it was the fourth round or so, they go head to head with each other as the round comes to an end. They're touching foreheads with one another. Keyshawn eventually pushes him off, puts his glove on the face of Madueño, pushes him away. Madueño swings and hits the referee, to which he goes flying across the other side of the ring against the ropes, or at least loses his footing momentarily. And then later on, a couple rounds later, Madueño basically pulls a WWE type carry on Keyshawn Davis, where he carries him completely vertically. It was a fight that was they just could not stand each other. He's doing the matador, Keyshawn Davis at one point doing the matador, because his footwork was so crisp that he's rounding about Miguel Madueño, catching him off footing, off base, off rhythm, and he pulls the matador move on him. And the people were acknowledging this. The people were at the edge of their seats, all in the build-up to what the main event was supposed to be, a Shakur Stevenson stoppage, not because people are asking too much of Shakur Stevenson, because Shakur Stevenson said he was going to deliver a knockout sensational performance to put behind what people had in their minds, and that being his last performance against Edwin de los Santos. We get to the co-main event, which was a really close, tightly contested fight between O'Shaquie Foster and Robson Conceicao. Here, I'll correct this. It wasn't a tightly contested fight. It was a very strategic, methodical fight in which O'Shaquie Foster definitely got the best of Conceicao. This is the robbery that people were screaming about all weekend. O'Shaquie Foster lost his title by way of judges. And in fact, the WBC should order an immediate rematch into this. A lot of shenanigans happened on this. The way that the scores were read. One thing is that the ESPN commentators had a basically one-sided fight. Many people throughout social media saw this as a clear, flawless victory for O'Shaquie Foster, where Conceicao didn't win a single round. Mark Craigle, part of ESPN, he said he had 11 rounds to 1 for Foster. Just think about this. How one-sided it was. I had it a little bit closer, and I had it a 116-112 for Foster. Because I appreciated the fact that Conceicao was taking the action to Foster in several rounds, or a few rounds, in which I was like, you know what? There was very little action from both of them, but I could appreciate that Conceicao was trying to take the fight to him and landed some good punches himself. Very far in between, but he tried. He did his thing. Conceicao is a complicated fighter. And O'Shaquie Foster was picking him apart. Good footwork, good counter punching, fast hands, good combinations. Not the most exchanges, not the most action-packed fight, but O'Shaquie Foster deserved to have retained his title. And in my opinion, and the majority of people's opinion, is that O'Shaquie Foster won this fight. The only ones that did not agree were the judges. And if you look at, which is something that's starting to garner around social media now, the three judges, Tony Lundy, 116-112 for Conceicao, Ron McNair, 116-112 for Foster, a similar score to how I had it, trying to give some credit to Conceicao here and there, not on purpose. It's just, I scored a few rounds for Conceicao, but I still had Foster winning. And then you had Paul Wallace, who was the assigned referee on paper, give the fight 115-113. Why am I emphasizing this? Because if you go back and you look at the scorecards that are at the judges that are read at the conclusion of the fight, they mentioned a Mark Gleason. Tony Lundy, Ron McNair, and a Mark Gleason or something to that extent. A judge that was not even assigned to this fight. Go figure, they read somebody else's card. Wait, what? Yeah, on paper, a Paul Wallace is assigned to score this fight, but they read somebody, a different judge's name. Mark Lyson. Now, check this out. Mark Lyson was a judge that was assigned one fight later. He was a judge that was going to be sitting ringside scoring the fight for Shakur Stevenson and Artem Haritunian. Yet they read his name during the Foster Conceicao fight, a fight in which he was not even assigned to score, to judge. Go figure. How do you respond to that? So you try to make sense of it and you're like, wait a minute, how do they read a judge that was not even assigned to score that fight? So then you look at the Keyshawn Davis fight, you're like, well, maybe it was an old card from the previous fight. Nope, he wasn't assigned to do the Madueño Davis fight either. So we look at the earlier ones, maybe the Abdullah Mason fight with Luis Lebron. Abdullah Mason completely picking apart a veteran like Luis Lebron. And no, Mark Lyson was not assigned to score that fight either. He was assigned one fight later, yet they read his name with a score. I would definitely protest this. Something happened there. And everybody screaming robbery. And the WBC should absolutely order an immediate rematch, a mandatory rematch, in which O'Shaquie Foster, you don't have to tell him twice. He will go in there and put an end to the show. He boxed a beautiful fight. You bet that he's going to go in for the kill if they give him the immediate rematch. He won't leave it to chance anymore. He deserved to walk away and retain his title, and it got taken from him. And that was dirty. So that proves to you that the entire crowd was so engaged, the crowd that came out to see Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson continuously draws 7,000, 8,000 people to these arenas. These are not 20,000 people, 15,000 people, 18,000 deep. But he continuously draws his 8,000 plus crowds, which are really good numbers. But they're not pay-per-view type numbers. The Nate Diaz Jorge Masvidal reported that same weekend out in LA, 18,000 plus. The crowd for Cepeda, a fight in which I happened to be present for because I was doing media. Thanks to you guys, I got the door open to by Golden Boy, and I got to go do media. If you haven't checked out some of the interviews that I managed to garner, like Bully, like up and coming star Joel Iriarte, amongst others, check out the YouTube channel that belongs to the show, and you can see some of the interviews that I managed to pull together this past weekend as I was there while this card was taking place. So I managed to watch all these fights later in the night, really late night. And listen, Shakur Stevenson, had the opportunity to close the show, renegotiate with Top Rank, stay put as he was, and get that Lomachenko fight before Tank Davis does. Lomachenko has now reportedly said that he will step aside for Tank and Shakur to take place, since he deems that Shakur thinks he's such a big problem, that he's in the way. Shakur's been calling for Loma. That was the way to get it, by a performance. They're looking at monetary. As far as promotionally speaking, the promoters are looking to make money. They're looking to make the biggest bag. And it's not going to happen with performances like that. Especially when you said that you were going to redeem what was supposed to be a one-off in the Edwin de los Santos. You said the same thing with Jeremiah Nakatila. He came back and looked sensational with Yoshino. Looked sensational with Oscar Valdez, looked sensational with Jamel Herring, but then you got the other fights. So when this becomes such a big issue, and it was the final fight of his contract, it's almost as if he's the one that let it go. There was even his grandfather on the corner asking him for some urgency, and it's almost as if Shakur knew better than what the grandfather was asking him. Like he was going to take matters into his own hand. And he did. He cruised to victory. And what I was saying earlier is that Shakur Stevenson is such a top-notch elite fighter that you're right. He could just easily continue his career unblemished as a champion. But his stock is taking hits because he's not drawing crowds anymore. He's a really good fighter. And we saw this happen in the past with fighters that were just not draws. They start losing drawing power. Promoters are not going to want to take them, because they know that they can't sell a big pay-per-view. The name's not going to do enough to carry him to a big, massive pay-per-view. Because of the style. So something interesting that was being put out there as a comparison of how great Shakur Stevenson is fighting. Well, Shakur Stevenson is an elite talent. And Killer Cam, over on the It Is What It Is podcast or show with Mace, he made a very good acknowledgement, because there were comparisons being drawn out to his style being compared to that of Floyd Mayweather's. He made a point saying that Floyd Mayweather, before he became Money Mayweather, he was Pretty Boy Floyd. And Pretty Boy Floyd was beating and knocking out opponents that entire first portion of his career so he could box and cruise to victories as Money Mayweather, because he had put himself in that position. And his point was, with Shakur Stevenson not even being a household name and a draw in that sense, such as your Canelos or your Tanks or your Terrence Crawford for that matter, you fight the way you fight when you've made it. And if you continue fighting the way you fight, then do it. You're going to have an unblemished career, an amazing career, but you're not going to be marketable. Don't expect the big paydays when you're not doing something to get them. He's got to take a chance in there and go for the kill, knowing that he may potentially get hit, but he doesn't want to even get touched. And so that was a point that they were making, that he wants to swim without getting wet. And that's besides the point. The only reason that I tuned into that was because of the huge back and forth on social media between Shakur Stevenson post-fight with Mace and Cameron that garnered the attention of social media and the internet. because they just went back and forth at each other, and with a lot of threats and this and that and commentary, over 300 plus tweets that they basically are saying, like, Shakur, where's the energy on fight night? Now you have all this energy, but you show up to fight night and you don't do it. Like, people are walking out. And that was something else that happened. That Top Rank ends up panning the camera as people are leaving the arena while his fight is taking place. And that was kind of a shady move by Top Rank, but it's almost like justifying for Top Rank, as dirty as it was, Top Rank basically saying, this is why we're not doing business with Shakur. That was dirty. You're right. But at that point, we already knew that Shakur had not agreed to re-sign with Top Rank, at least not agreed to the $15 million 5-fight deal that was reportedly made. So Top Rank took a cheap shot. No one's criticizing Shakur's abilities, attributes, boxistically. And he could continue his entire career like this and go unblemished because he's that good. But no one's going to want to get in there knowing that they're going to make a subpar payment when they could get in there with somebody else who is willing to leave it all out there and has more of a fan-friendly style or a boxing-friendly, marketable style. And you had it in his undercard. Keyshawn Davis, a lot of people are saying he should fight Frank Martin. Keyshawn Davis, Olympic star, silver medalist, has a war brewing with Andy Cruz, whom he lost several finals and the silver medal, or he lost the gold medal to, which garnered him the silver in the 2020 Olympics. Both of them turned pro now. Both of them are on that collision course to one another, and Keyshawn Davis is fighting that way. He just stopped Pedraza, and now he stops Miguel Madueño, another rugged road warrior journeyman type fighter, very similar to that of Pedro Angulo style Miguel Madueño. Very durable, good chin. Keyshawn Davis put some amazing combinations on Madueño and just couldn't get him out of there. But it was not due to lack of trying. And he affected good defense and counter punching and mitigated the damage that he took from Madueño throughout the fight. Didn't get touched, didn't get hit much, but took the action and wanted to get him out of there. And that's why had people on their feet and applauding him. That's a fan-friendly style. So that's what we got with Shakur Stevenson. Big card in Newark, New Jersey. So we'll see what comes of it. We'll see if he ends up going to Floyd Mayweather. We'll see if he ends up going with Eddie Hearn. Both decent options. I doubt that he'll go with Golden Boy, but if he does, you got a sure shot there with William Cepeda. Keyshawn Davis and Frank Martin. That would be a hell of a fight if that's something that gets signed. Abdullah Mason, whew, he's looking great. And O'Shaquie Foster, let's keep tabs on that because now the 130-pound division, you got Lamont Roach, who just recently retained his title on a Pro Box TV headliner out in Washington, D.C. about a week ago. He successfully retained his title that he lifted from Hector Garcia, so now he successfully defends it for the first time. And so he's the champ. WBA, you got Anthony Casachi, who dethroned Joe Cordina and unified his IBO, which is a smaller organization, with the IBF. You got Navarrete, who's a WBO champ, potentially coming back down to 130. He hasn't vacated yet. And his interim being Oscar Valdez. And if he doesn't unify with Oscar Valdez, his number one contender, I believe, if it's still listed that way, would be Prince Bell, which would be an awesome fight for Navarrete. But remember, he's reportedly having trouble making weight at 130. And then O'Shaquie Foster was the other champion who now has been dethroned by Robson Conceicao. Who was given another title fight He's fought SHAKUR, lost to SHAKUR, lost to Oscar Valdez, and had a draw with Navarrete. So we'll see what comes up the SHAKUR-Stevenson fight. Again, masterful performance by SHAKUR-Stevenson, just not what people are looking for him. And it seems like he's pushing his fans away with the excuses and so forth, saying that Haratunian was running from him the whole night when it wasn't the case. We know what we saw. We saw Haratunian taking the fight to him, and SHAKUR-Stevenson masterfully getting out of the way and picking him apart with his counterpunching. But he had an opponent there, and he had many chances that he could have taken him out. He said it was hard for him to make a fight when somebody's staying away from him and not willing to fight. That wasn't the case. That's not what we saw. Haratunian was there for him. And then he said that he doesn't care about the fans, and he talks against his fan base and so forth. And of course, he's starting to isolate himself and push his fan base away and push potential future fans away, because people are not going to want to tune in, and he's isolating the fan base that puts him in the position and has put him in the position where he finds himself. Yes, his talent has carried him to this position, but without the fan base support, the paydays drop. And he could easily go now from these top-ranking ESPN pay-per-view or ESPN Plus, ESPN cards, and these decent cards where he's been highlighted time and again, and they've made big weekends for him to be a headliner on time and again. And now if he doesn't get a big promoter to push him and market him in the right direction, then he could end up on a Pro Box card. Or worse off. But he's got a decent name that still has some drawing power. Let's see what comes of SHAKUR-Stevenson's career going forward, and we'll know sooner than later, I imagine. So I'll leave you guys with that. That was the Newark card for this past weekend. Take care of yourselves. Have yourselves a great night, and we'll continue pushing forward. I'll check you guys out on the next episode. Have a good one.